Off the coast of China, engineers are doing something that sounds impossible. They're building an island from scratch in the middle of the ocean. And not just any island, one big enough to hold one of the largest airports on Earth. When it's finished, it'll cover 2,800 football fields and move more people each year than an entire city. This is Dalian Jinzhou Bay International Airport, and the reason it exists might surprise you. Let me paint you a picture of what's happening right now in Dalian. 3 years ago, off China's northeastern coast, there was nothing but open sea. Today, there's a landmass the size of Manhattan rising out of the water. 20 square kilometers of new land, built entirely from the ocean floor up. That's the equivalent of 3,500 soccer fields, or an entire town flattened out and rebuilt on water. And China didn't discover this land. They created it. Sand, rock, and steel, forming an island where none existed before. To understand how massive this is, think of Hong Kong International Airport, once called an engineering miracle. This one will be even bigger Kansai Airport in Japan, built on an artificial island in Osaka Bay. Smaller still. What China is building in Dalian makes both look like practice runs. But size is only the beginning. When it opens, the airport will have 4 operational runways, meaning 4 planes can land or take off at once. Coordinating that is like conducting 4 orchestras simultaneously, except each musician is a jet carrying hundreds of people. And they're planning ahead. The island has room to expand if demand grows. The terminal alone will cover 900,000 square meters. That's 200 football fields under one roof. Walking from one end to the other will feel like half a marathon. You could fit more than 100 Olympic swimming pools inside it. It's also designed for the Airbus A380, the world's largest passenger jet. Most airports struggle to accommodate it. This one is built around it. When Phase 1 opens, it's expected to handle 43 million passengers a year, more than the entire population of Canada. But that's only the start. Once fully complete, the goal is 80 million passengers and 1 million tons of cargo every year. That's 220,000 people moving through the airport every single day, the equivalent of an entire mid-sized city passing through one island. And to think, just a few years ago, there was nothing here but water. So here's the question that should be blowing your mind right now. How do you actually build an island in the ocean? You can't just pour concrete into the water and call it a day. The ocean does not work like that. Waves, currents, storms, earthquakes. All of these are constantly trying to reclaim whatever you build. What China is doing is called land reclamation, but that's a polite term for an absolutely brutal engineering process. First, they have to survey the ocean floor. Engineers send down sonar equipment to map every inch of the seabed, looking for the most stable foundation possible. They're checking the geology, the water depth, the currents, everything. One mistake here, and the entire island could sink or shift over time. Once they find the right spot, the real work begins. Massive dredging ships move in. These are not normal boats. Think of them as giant floating vacuum cleaners the size of office buildings. They suck up millions of tons of sand and sediment from deeper parts of the ocean floor. Then comes the fill process. That sand and sediment gets pumped through enormous pipes and deposited in precise locations. Layer by layer, they're literally raising the ocean floor until it breaks the surface. But you cannot just pile sand up and call it land. Water would wash it away in weeks. So they build massive seawalls around the perimeter, using enormous rocks and concrete blocks. Some of these blocks weigh as much as a car. They're dropped into place to form a barrier that can withstand typhoons and storm surges. Then they compact the land. Heavy machinery rolls over it thousands of times, pressing it down, making it stable enough to support the weight of runways, terminals, and eventually millions of people. The engineering challenges are mind-boggling. Dalian sits in an area that experiences harsh winters. The sea freezes, so the island has to be built to handle ice expansion and contraction. It's in an earthquake zone, so the foundation needs flexibility. Rigid structures would crack and crumble. And there's the saltwater problem. Saltwater corrodes everything: steel, concrete, electronics. All of it degrades faster near the ocean. Every material used has to be specially treated or designed to resist corrosion for decades. China has been perfecting this technology for years. They've built artificial islands in the South China Sea, expanded their coastline in multiple cities, and constructed several offshore airports. Each project taught them something new. Dalian is then putting all that knowledge together into one mega project. But here's what makes this different from just showing off engineering skills. Location matters. And Dalian's location? It's everything. Pull up a map and look closely at Dalian. It sits at the very tip of the Liaodong Peninsula, reaching into the Yellow Sea. To the east lies South Korea, to the northeast, Japan, and to the north, Russia's Far East. Dalian is a strategic pivot point between three of the world's largest economies. Northeast Asia is one of the planet's most powerful economic zones. Within a few hundred miles, you have China, Japan, and South Korea, plus the Russian port of Vladivostok, forming a dense cluster of trade, industry, and innovation. But China has faced a problem here: connectivity. Most of its global gateways are far to the south: Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, Shenzhen. Meanwhile, the northeast, once China's industrial heartland, has been left behind. This region built the country's factories, steel mills, and shipyards. But as China moved toward technology and services, many cities declined, young people left. Investment followed. Dalian has been the exception. Its deep water port keeps it prosperous, but its infrastructure has held it back. The current airport is too small, too old, and can't handle the traffic needed to make Dalian a true regional hub. So China asked a simple question: what if Dalian became the aviation gateway to all of Northeast Asia? Think about that. Today, flights between northeastern China, South Korea, Japan, and Russia often route through Beijing, Seoul, or Tokyo, adding time, cost, and complexity. But a new, purpose-built mega airport in Dalian could change everything. Direct routes, faster travel, lower prices, more business, more tourism, more trade. And for China, that's not just convenience, it's strategy. Beijing wants to weave Northeast Asia into a single economic network with itself at the center. To do that, it needs infrastructure that makes China indispensable to its neighbors. That's what this project is really about. It's not just building runways on reclaimed land. It's about claiming a position on the regional map that can't be ignored. In the 21st century, you don't win the geography game by owning the land. You win it by building the connections, the ports, the railways, and the airports that make your location matter. Now let's talk about the part everyone whispers about, but few people explain clearly. How much is this actually costing, and why is China willing to spend it? Building an artificial island in the ocean and putting a mega airport on top is not cheap. Estimates for projects like this typically range between $10 billion to $15 billion for the initial construction. But the total investment, including infrastructure connections, support facilities, and long-term development, could easily push past $40 billion over the next decade. That's not a typo, $40 billion. To put that in perspective, that's more than the GDP of entire countries like Iceland or Jamaica. It's enough money to build 40 major hospitals or fund a small nation's annual budget. So why would China do this? The simple answer: because they can see 20 years ahead, and what they see is worth it. Here's how China thinks about infrastructure. In the West, particularly in the United States, infrastructure projects get analyzed through immediate cost-benefit calculations. How much will it cost? How quickly will we see returns? What's the profit margin? China does not think that way. They think in terms of strategic positioning and long-term network effects. An airport is not just a building where planes land. It's a catalyst. It creates jobs, construction jobs first, then permanent positions for tens of thousands of people running the airport, airlines, cargo operations, hotels, restaurants. Each of those workers spends money in the local economy. It attracts investment. Companies want to build near major airports, manufacturing facilities, logistics hubs, tech parks. They all cluster around aviation infrastructure because it makes moving goods and people easier. It boosts property values. Land around new airports typically increases in value dramatically. The Chinese government, which controls much of the land, can capture that appreciation. And then there's the cargo angle. 1 million tons of cargo per year is not just about boxes moving around. Dalian becoming a logistics hub for the entire region means high-value electronics from Japan, automotive parts from Korea, resources from Russia, finished goods from China, all flowing through one centralized point. Control the logistics, control the trade, control the trade, control the economic relationships. There's also a national pride element that's hard to quantify, but impossible to ignore. China is building projects like this partly because they can, and partly because it sends a message. We're not just catching up to the West anymore, we're surpassing it. But here's the uncomfortable question. What if it does not work? History is littered with megaprojects that failed, airports that never filled their capacity, islands that eroded, billions spent on infrastructure that ended up underutilized. China itself has examples. Ghost cities in Inner Mongolia, high-speed rail lines that run mostly empty, massive bridges connecting places where few people actually travel. Could this airport become another white elephant? Could it sit there, beautiful and modern, with runways echoing with emptiness? It's possible. But here's why China is betting it would not happen. China has learned from its mistakes, and they're applying those lessons to Dalian. First, they're building this in phases. The first phase is actually scheduled to open around 2026. That's just around the corner. The full completion with all facilities operational? That's targeted for 2035. The airport would not just suddenly open with capacity for 80 million passengers. Phase 1 targets 43 million. That's ambitious, but achievable based on current regional travel patterns and growth projections. Now, here's the reality check. Land reclamation projects in China have faced delays before. The construction timeline has already been pushed back from earlier estimates. Building an island in the ocean does not follow neat schedules. Weather, engineering challenges, and unforeseen complications happen. So while 2026 is the target for initial operations, delays are part of the game with projects in this complex. If demand grows, they expand. If it does not, they pause. That's actually smart planning. Second, they are connecting this airport to everything else. High-speed rail links are already in the works. Highways are being expanded. The port is being upgraded. They're not building an isolated megaproject. They're building a transportation network with the airport as the centerpiece. Third, timing matters. Air travel in Asia has been growing faster than almost anywhere else in the world. Yes, there have been disruptions, but the long-term trend is clear. More people are flying, more cargo is moving by air, and the infrastructure needs to keep up. By the time full completion happens in the 2030s, China's middle class will be hundreds of millions larger than it is today. More disposable income means more travel. More businesses mean more cargo. The demand side of the equation looks solid. Fourth, and this is crucial, China has the political will and financial capacity to make this work, even if it's not immediately profitable. They can run losses for years if necessary, subsidizing operations until the airport reaches critical mass. Western democracies often cannot do that because voters and investors get impatient. China does not have that constraint. And finally, there's the geopolitical angle. If tensions in the region ever ease, if trade barriers come down, if political relationships improve, Dalian's geographic position becomes even more valuable. An airport designed for regional integration is a bet on peace and cooperation. If that bet pays off, the returns could be astronomical. But even if tensions remain, China benefits. They've upgraded their northeastern infrastructure, created economic activity in a struggling region, and demonstrated technological capability that intimidates competitors and attracts partners. So what are we really looking at here? On the surface, it's an airport on an artificial island, impressive engineering, massive scale, and a staggering price tag. But zoom out, and it's something bigger. A country reshaping its geography to reshape its economy, creating land where there was none, building connections where barriers once stood. The Dalian Jinzhou Bay Airport is not just concrete and steel. It's a statement of ambition and long-term vision. Will it work? Will those planes take off on schedule? Or will delays test that ambition? Nobody knows for sure. If you think building an island airport to reshape trade is bold, wait until you see what China is doing next. They're carving a highway straight through the Himalayas, linking China to Nepal and bringing it right to India's doorstep. It's not just engineering, it's strategy on a global scale. Click watch next to see that video. Thanks for watching.